Hi, I'm back. You know how it is. You take some much needed time off to finally, after 5 years, have your honeymoon. And then you get back and you need to take some time to recover from the jet lag and catch back up at your day job. And then you have some completely routine medical stuff that goes well, but unexpectedly it has consequences. Consequences? Side effects. Side effects is the word I'm looking for. And the next thing you know, you haven't put a video out in a month and a half. You're partway through October and you're on blood thinners, which I can't say I recommend. Better than the alternative. Anyway, hello. I'm back now. Given that there's less than 2 weeks until Halloween, it's blatantly obvious that I'm not gonna get done the stuff that I had planned for this month. That's okay. We're just gonna have a nice, gentle, cozy, fun time. As you can probably tell, I got a new camera. That's why I'm holding this, because I really like that this camera will record its own audio that doesn't sound like crap. Unfortunately, if I want it to not sound like crap, I have to hold the mic like this, because if I clip it to my clothes, the throw is not really big enough. And I could probably fix that. Anyway, crafts. So as usual, it being the season, I have acquired some Halloween home items, and they form the basis of a couple of things that I would like to do in this video. I got this really cute pink throw from, I think, Asda? Yeah, George at Home. It's cute, it's pink, it's got tassels, it's got little bats on it. I could just use it as a throw, but I'm kind of thinking I have a blanket wrap that it just has a slit cut in it so that you can wear it like a cape. I think this would be super cute with I have a lot of black and pink Lolita dresses and stuff like that. I think that this would be better if it was wearable. So that's one project that I'd like to get done. Of course, it wouldn't be Halloween if I did not pick up at least one LARP suitable light source. So I have this fun lantern. I think this was a Sainsbury's number. I will almost forgive them for the fact that they were out of stock of the little LED ghost neon sign that I really wanted. Not quite, but almost. This is cool. I really like it. It works. Not super cheap looking. I don't think it's the worst thing just on its own, but I'm conscious of the fact that you can see the LED candlelight, and it just could be a little bit, it could just be finessed a little bit to look a bit more atmospheric, a bit more character appropriate, a bit less like a Halloween decoration, and a bit more like it's pretending to be a real lantern. At minimum, I've seen some fake stained glass effect, not necessarily putting the colours in, but giving it that sort of thick, blurry old glass feel. If I can figure out how to do that, I think that would take this a long way. On the subject of throws, look, I just buy homeware because I know that it's a big square of fabric that I can make stuff out of. And I got this one. I was in two minds about whether I would just use this as it is, but I think I would since this one is a knitted pattern, a big repeat, but not too big a repeat. I want to try and make a jumper out of it. So what I'm probably going to do with that is that I'm going to take a jumper that I already own and that I know fits me really well and I really like. I'm going to use that to trace a pattern, and then I'm going to see if I've got enough of this to make a Halloween jumper, shove it through the overlocker. Basically, it's even got, I think the edges of this are actually ribbed, so I basically don't have to do any work. And I'll have another jumper, which I don't have a lot of, and it'll be a Halloween print jumper, which I don't have any of. So I have a cute little vest in Halloween fabric that I cut out before I went on holiday and did not have time to finish sewing, so finishing that would be cool. I grabbed this thing. Now, it's supposed to be a wall hanging, but I looked at it and immediately was I want to put that on my head. It's a bit chunky and heavy right now to just immediately wear on my head, but I have seen that it's molded in two parts and screwed together, so I'm wondering if I unscrew the back, if I can cut some of it away. This might be ambitious, but we'll see how that goes. That one's a little bit of a stretch goal. I'll also then have to mount it on a headband and add some extra bits and pieces to make it look good. Is that it? I think that's it. I think that might be all. I think that might be all the Halloween crafts I want to do that aren't any of the big elaborate crafts that I had originally planned. We don't need to get into that. Awesome. Super glad we had this chat. I guess let's get into it. Let's kick things off with this pink bat throw, which I'm going to turn into a cape or wearable blanket. This was a really easy and straightforward DIY. All I had to do was refold the throw into quarters so that I could find and mark the centre. Then I just had to refold again, this time to find the middle of what will become the front. At this point I also removed the tag because honestly nobody needs that in their life. I cut straight up the fold to the centre point I'd previously marked. From there I used a shirt to guesstimate the correct size for a neck hold. Marked that out with pins and then cut it out. For the final steps we can decamp to the sofa, as I'm just going to double fold all of the new raw edges and sew them down by hand. And that's this first project complete. For my next project, I researched a couple of different ways of doing fake glass effects. A lot of them seem to involve specialist materials. However, as usual, Theatre Tech YouTube came to my rescue, and it seemed like I'd be able to get a reasonably decent effect with Mod Podge and acrylic paint that would hide the very obvious fake candle flame. My Mod Podge is pretty old at this point and the consistency of putty, but still just usable enough that I won't throw it out. And this was actually really helpful in getting a super thick and textured effect in 1 or 2 layers. Your mileage may vary if you're a sane person who doesn't keep glue for half a decade. I decided I wanted more of a frosted effect as opposed to an actual colour, so I used the tiniest amount of paint to just tint the glue and make sure it wasn't a bright, off-putting white. I made sure everything was nicely coated and then used the brush to add a stippled texture that would be evocative of old or dirty glass. Then all I needed to do was wait for it to dry. Hello! So, obviously a big reason that I was off for as long as I was that I was in Japan for 2.5 weeks. A holiday we have been attempting to plan since 2019, but there you are. It was amazing, highly recommend. Let's be honest, the internet is full of influencers telling you to go to Japan, so I'm not gonna add to that. It is a place that I really love, in spite of having some mildly complicated feelings about Japan. You know, on the one hand, we should oppose authoritarian states in every place that they exist, but on the other, I am autistic and I do love rules. Anyway, I'm not going to do a full Japan haul because we bought a lot of stuff. People have already asked if I picked up any nice fabrics or craft things or whatever, so here you go. Here are all of the fabrics and craft things that I picked up in Japan. We have, of course, our craft kits. I wanted to get more but didn't have space. I did get this. This is a little kit for making your own Totoro keychain plushie. I thought that would be fun. We went to the Tokyo Open Air Architectural Museum. This is not specific to the Architectural Museum, but it's a little model kit for building a little house. I think it's actually a shop or a bathhouse. Maybe a bathhouse. Anyway, it reminded me of some of the buildings that I'd seen there, so I got that one. I also got this little 3-dimensional paper diorama kit of the cat bus from My Neighbor Totoro. I really wanted to get a cat bus tattoo, but my partner is freaked out by the cat bus, so I got this instead. Japan is not a great place for knitting yarn. Speciality yarn, kinda. You have to go looking for it in very specific places, but if you want yarn for weaving or machine knitting or technical stuff, you can get some really unusual yarns in Japan. But I did find one hand knitting shop in Osaka, and they did have some Japanese stuff. A lot of it was just the same yarn as you can get anywhere else, and this is Noro, which you can get everywhere else in the world, but I got these ones in Japan, so I don't know what I'm going to do with them yet. I just picked 2 colours that I quite liked. Potentially I'm going to use them in weaving, but they are also, I think, technically 4-ply, which is what I tend to use for basically everything. If you know me at all or have been around for any length of time, big into embroidered patches. Really big into embroidered patches. I got 3 really cute embroidered patches from the Studio Ghibli Museum in Tokyo. We didn't go to Ghibli Park in Nagoya. We didn't have time for everything. We didn't have time for a lot of things. Japan is very big. I was weighing up which one of the 3 I wanted to get, and my partner was just like, get all of them. When do you think we're coming back? So I got all of them. And then we went to a place called Naoshima. Boy, is it hard to get to. However, do highly recommend. You might be familiar that Japan has something islands, as in islands that are known for a particular thing. So there's a rabbit island, and I believe there's a cat island. On second reflection, maybe Naoshima's the cat island. However, Naoshima is better known for being the art island. Is it hard to get to? Kinda. Is it worth it? Absolutely. It's this relatively small island with not very many people on it, and yet they have all of these incredible open-air sculptures. They have an entire gallery dedicated to Liu Fan, whose work is incredible. And then they have the Chichu, which is one of the best buildings I've ever been in my entire life, and it contains 13 whole works of art. But every single one of those 13 works of art is incredible. In particular, Naoshima has, I think, 4 pieces in total by an artist called James Turrell, one of which is a sky space. I believe Terrell's done a couple of sky spaces, so there's one in Naoshima, there's one in Arizona, and there's one in the Yorkshire Sculpture Park, which I've been to a lot. Yeah, we went halfway around the world, turned a corner, and we're like, oh, we're in Wakefield. It was wonderful. There's a bunch of other artists in Naoshima as well. They've got some Yayoi Kusama pumpkins. They've also got a bunch of installations by an artist I hadn't heard of before called Tatsuya Miyajima. I was very taken by the sort of like digital display numbers effects, and these are technically stickers that you can make iron-on patches, which I suspect means I'm going to have to sew them on, because anytime something does 2 jobs, I'm like, are you very good at both of them? Those are super cool. I got those from the Bernese Art Museum, and I just need to figure out where I put them on the embroidered patch jacket. So then we're on to the inevitable kimono that I intend to cut up and make into other things. There were lots of really lovely like antique shops that wanted to sell you like nice kimono, and I felt quite bad that I was just going to like Book Off Plus, the bargain bin, please take these away sections, because I'm not going to wear them. I don't do that anymore, but I am going to cut them up and make things out of them. So I got this in the sale section of a Book Off Plus. I got this one, and I got this one. They were in like a junk shop in Miyajima. I like that they're very similar but not the same. Those 3 are all... Oh, you're testing my knowledge now. Fukuro? They're one of the more formal kind of obi. They're the same width the whole way along, which makes them great if you want to make stuff out of them. I was able to grab this, also in the sale section of Book Off Plus. This is a bolt of kimono fabric, so it is a kimono before it's become a kimono. I'm in love with the colours. It's quite damaged, so I think I'm going to have to be a bit creative. Like, I could just make a kimono out of it, but it's got like wear patches that would come up in the final piece, whereas I think if I make it into something that's cut into smaller pieces, I can hide that a bit. These 3 kimono, also half price sale section of Book Off Plus. This one's super cute. It's a single layer. I think if it's not wool, it's pretending to be wool. I think the pink and blue check is adorable. This one is super. The inner lining is quite damaged, but it's this sort of shades of green check plaid crepe. Very excited about that. And this is another single layer. I am even more confident that this one is wool. It's got some moth holes in it, but we can work around that. But it was such a lovely, vivid color. I love it. I love the combination of, it's got like a proper black pinstripe going through it, but it's also the white is more of a casserie. What is that in? They've patterned the warp. I think that's what's happened there. They've dyed the warp before they weave the fabric. And finally, these were in the 1,000 yen box in the front of a antique shop in Kyoto. They're both hari, which are jackets, so there's a non-zero chance that I might actually just wear these. It's a lot easier to do with hari, but I'm such a sucker for plaid silk. So this one is like a black and red, and this one is shades of brown and orange, very autumnal. I think that's everything. I know there's a lot of hashtag discourse about hauls. I particularly like hauls where no one's trying to persuade you to buy anything. Unless you're going to Japan, you can't buy most of these things. And in fact, even if you do go to Japan, you can't buy most of these things. You're just living vicariously through the nice things that other people have. I think it's fine to live vicariously through other people's joy. Let's criticize capitalism, but also not lose sight of the fact that things are nice. It is nice to look at things. Anyway, let's get back to the Halloween stuff. I have a jumper that fits me really nicely, so my first step in attempting to clone it was to make a pattern. Luckily, this was a very simple shape that laid flat very easily, so I could just trace around the garment onto some dot and cross paper, then clean up the lines. The two-sided knitted throw has a nice sized repeating pattern with a top and bottom border of matching ribbing, and I had a decent amount to work with. My favourite pattern weights of all time are scissors. They're heavy and a funny shape that somehow seems to work really well with the funny shapes that pattern pieces are. I can't explain it, they're just very good. The pattern I had made didn't have seam allowance, so I added a little extra room all around. For the front of the jumper, I was okay wasting a little of the material to make sure that I got the design nicely centred. I figured it would be less noticeable on the back and sleeves. I didn't have enough continuous main fabric and ribbing to cut the sleeves out all in one the way I did the body. So instead I cut sections of ribbing separately to attach to the bottom of the sleeve pieces. I also didn't have enough to cut two identical sleeves, but I did try and make sure the patterns lined up close enough to look cohesive. Then it was just a case of running all the pieces through my overlocker, or at least it should have been. That was the sound of me breaking a needle, which derailed this project for a couple days, as it turned out I didn't have any spares. Time to move on to a different DIY for a bit. Yes, hello. So I am on to the vest. I very enthusiastically cut this out of a couple of pillowcases, so I don't have a whole lot of fabric, and sort of missed the bit where this whole thing is supposed to be bound in bias binding. None of the bias binding I have on hand is anywhere near being the right colours, because of course I had to pick something multicoloured. I've got like a handful of the bigger scraps, the pillowcases left, and I'm trying to decide if I can be bothered scraping out every last piece of bias binding out of this pile of scraps. But it will look better if I do that. Honestly, most of these DIYs were going so well and so easily that I shouldn't be surprised that one of them is throwing me. But there you are. I'm just gonna crack on with this. Thwarted by two separate projects, I decided that was enough of fabrics for a while, and time to get to grips with this plastic ram skull. I discovered that my tiniest Phillips head screwdriver was actually perfect for getting all the screws out, and then I could easily separate the two halves of the skull. I sketched out roughly what parts of the bottom half I wanted to keep, basically just the teeth and a little surrounding area. And then it was time to get the knockoff Dremel out for the first time in a long while. Obviously, don't forget all of your protective gear if you're using power tools. In spite of the goggles and the mask, I did realise about halfway through this that using a spinny cutting tool on something I was holding still with my bare hands while on blood thinners was probably not the smartest thing I could be doing, so like a true crafter I changed nothing except turning the speed down on my tool, which mostly just made my life more difficult. But I felt safer, which is all that matters. A pair of needle-nose pliers were really useful in helping break apart the plastic I'd cut imperfectly. Then it was time to recombine the two halves of the skull and screw them back together. I couldn't quite make a headband work with this, so instead I glued some tapes that I'd be able to use to tie it onto something. I also started padding the plastic with scraps of wool batting to make it more comfortable to wear. I used some plastic clips to hold the batting in place while the glue dried, and boy do I not recommend this at all. The glue soaked through the batting and stuck to the clips. Not sure why I decided to use fancy glue for this at all, it's a Halloween decoration, hot glue would have been fine. I decided to cover the hole in the back with a small piece of black velvet, which would look good and also, in theory, help grip onto my hair. I stuffed as much padding as possible into the open gap in the back of the skull. Attaching the velvet was sufficiently fiddly that I did just give up and use hot glue, and it's not perfect, but it's good enough. And that's another project finished. So remember that handful of scraps? Over 5.5 meters of bias binding. Let the record show it was worth it. And so here we are. It's Halloween and all my projects are done. The cape came out exactly as I imagined. I'm really happy with how it looks and hangs, and it was such a quick DIY. The jumper is excellent. I didn't quite get the maths right on the sleeves, so they come up slightly short, but it's not super noticeable. In the end, once I'd fixed the needle in my overlocker, it went together really easily. The most complicated bit was adding ribbing to the collar. I decided I didn't want to use the existing ribbing and instead knit my own, which was probably a slightly silly idea, but I like how it turned out. The vest turned out excellent, super cute, and definitely worth the time making matching bias binding. I'm really happy with the lantern. It looks loads better and it took hardly any time and effort. I know I'll get lots of use out of it. In theory, I'm happy with the skull. I definitely achieved what I set out to do, but although it's pretty comfortable, it is really heavy and the ties don't quite work for keeping it on my head. I've definitely got some more tweaks to do before I can use this as part of a costume. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to keep the YouTube gods happy. Follow me on Instagram to see pictures of my cat, and down in the description box you'll find a link to my Ko-fi page where you can make a one-off or recurring donation to support this channel and my insatiable desire for Halloween tat. My Ko-fi supporters have massively contributed to a bunch of things on this channel, including buying my overlocker, and I couldn't do what I do without their support. Dream big, and I'll see you next time.